So moving right along. First, Kate, are there any citizen comments? I think you're on mute.
No, she said no comments.
No comments, okay. Then moving right along, item 1.1, Board of Assessors, tax classification hearing. Presenter is Amy Gow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Each year, the assessors come before the board to ask you to vote on 4 tax rate options. The first option is the residential factor, and that is to maintain a single tax rate with a factor of 1 or a split tax rate with a factor of less than 1. The second option is an open space discount. Dover does not have any property classified as open space. The third is a residential exemption, and this would shift the tax burden from properties that are principal residence to owners of vacant land or rental properties. And the fourth is a small commercial exemption. This exemption would reduce the taxes of properties occupied by small businesses and shift the tax burden to the larger commercial industrial taxpayers. The Board of Assessors is recommending a residential factor of 1. They're recommending a no vote on the open space discount, a no vote on the residential exemption, and a no vote on the small commercial exemption.
Thank you, Amy. Any comments from members of the Assessors Board of Assessors? Charlie or Bob?
None for me.
Oh, this is what we've done before.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the Board of Selectmen? John?
Is there any way we can classify Ford as a large commercial base and shift the tax burden to Ford?
I'll second that one.
I thank the board for their recommendations, and Amy, thank you for the report. And no questions from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Robin?
None for me, thank you.
All right. I move to approve the recommendations of the Board of Assessors for a single tax classification residential factor of 1 with no open space discount, residential or small commercial exemptions.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bob, there's an attendee who has their hand up. It's a 508 number. Just wanted to bring it to your attention in case you wanted to entertain public comment.
I would like the number to sort of identify themselves.
Do we do that?
So is the person left?
No, they're still there. If they can hear us, I believe it's *6 since they've dialed in. Is that correct, Kate?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, it's Bonnie. I obviously, the link didn't work, so I'm on the phone. I just was saying that I'm there, that's all, to support Amy, that's
okay.
all.
Okay, well, thank you there. Thank you, Bonnie.
Okay, that's it. All right.
All righty. Then we're going to move on. Item 1.2, Minuteman Regional High School Athletic Field Presentation and Potential Vote. Presenters, Ford Spalding and Dr. Edward Bulquillan. Not bad, huh?
Very good, very good.
Good job, Bob. I don't know if I should thank John Jeffries for his remarks or not, so I'm just going to ignore him.
Or join the club, that's what we
Right. Don't get see.
You're on the good list.
Boy, that was a softball you just threw right down Robin's.
All right, let's move forward. Mr. Chairman, thank you for hosting us at at this meeting. I'm Ford Spalding, for those that don't know me, Dover's representative to the Minuteman School Committee. And with me is our superintendent, Edward McQuillan, who will make our presentation to you this evening. What I wanted to point out is this athletic complex that we are moving forward on was part of our original submission to the MSBA when we proposed our newly completed building approximately 8 years ago. It is an added alternate to our submission. Therefore, it is part of our project partnership with the MSBA, even though they are not participating in the cost, nor do they participate in any athletic field cost for anyone that we're knowledgeable about. We feel that this is an integral part of any high school education. In fact, it is a critical part of our high school education. It will provide an opportunity for competitive athletics with other high schools, as well as a place for outdoor physical activities for all of our students. One fact that many of you probably don't know is Minuteman offers to all of its students a no-cut sports arrangement, which means if you go out for football, anybody that goes out can play, which is very unique to most high schools in Massachusetts. In addition, because of our unique location, almost adjacent to Interstate 95, the complex will offer income-producing rental opportunities for us to many of our district communities and neighbors, which Ed will be discussing. To tell you more, let me turn the presentation over to our superintendent, Ed McQuillan.
Well, thanks, Ford. Appreciate it. It's good to be with you. We had sent out a PowerPoint. Was Kate going to start that? Okay, great. Thanks. Just go right to slide 2. So just to review some of what Ford said, the MSBA project, which I think it's almost to the day, in November of 2008, that we submitted our statement of interest to the MSBA. Long story short, a very long story shorter, is the MSBA project is still 1 year early, and it's on budget. In our original budget to the MSBA, we did have minimal fields, less than $1 million. And over the course of the last 6 years or so, most intensively the last 3 years of construction, through exemplary project management, we've been able to have available to us almost $4 million from the MSBA project itself. Because of the situation in the area right now, we've had some very competitive bidding, which has resulted in some great pricing. Because of the economic and COVID crisis, we've got very low interest rates, historically low interest rates. And as Ford was alluding to, for a small incremental investment in lighting, we've got much greater revenue opportunity. And we have all reports and data available for anyone who wants to review the details of some of these analyses. But next slide. So as we realized we were going to have close to $4 million left over from I don't want to say left over, but that we had managed towards, we began to look at what could we build for that. We went through a variety of different scenarios, and this is the one the school building committee and the school committee landed on as a base bid. And it includes 3 synthetic fields, which are actually made out of an organic material, so synthetic might not be the right term for that. In this, there are no lights, and there's a walking track around the large field, no competitive track. We had to maintain emergency access, and there are, of course, bullpens and batting cages, scoreboards, and utilities for each of these fields. And almost a year ago, we estimated this would cost us around $5.9 million. So we knew we didn't have all of that money available to us. Next slide. So the alternates basically were lighting around the 3 fields, a competitive running track, some additional equipment, and fencing around the whole complex. Next slide. So when we looked at the 5.9 base bid, the school committee looked at what funds do we have available for us, and we have about $4 million in the project. We also have a pretty robust rental facilities revolving account, commonly known as enterprise accounts on a municipal level. For many, many years, we've had been collecting rental fees from our swimming pool, from our fields. We haven't really collected much in the last 3 years because we've had no fields. And then the Minuteman stabilization account. This is the capital stabilization account that we had approved by all the member towns about 5 or 6 years ago. And the purpose for developing that stabilization account was focused primarily on putting aside money for a new equipment in the new building, because the MSBA's formula for FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, is woefully inadequate when it comes to the the high-tech and expensive equipment that a vocational technical high school would need. So in our annual budget, we would put in through $200,000, $300,000 a year. But in the meantime, over the last 3 years, Governor Baker and the Capital Skills, or the Skills Cabinet, put together grant programs, and we've been very successful. As a matter of fact, this week we're installing about $300,000 of new equipment, and that total amount of equipment that we've gotten through that program is about $1.5 million. So we haven't had to go into our capital stabilization account at all. And so the school committee voted to set aside 1.2 million of it for this project. Next slide. I don't know if you can see that. These are all the bids we got. We had 8 bidders. I heard we would have a 9th, but he hit the wrong button or something. So Hemlich Construction was the low bidder by almost $1 million. And we were a little bit wary of this, but after our due diligence and interviewing them, interviewing their references, and also doing some checking, we found that they're a really good company. They've done great work. Next slide.
They're also a neighbor. They're from Woburn, and they want to do business with us.
Yes. They just completed a field in Lexington, and recently at the Shawsheen Regional Vocational High School, they completed synthetic fields there. So this just shows what Hemlich's bids were for the alternates. The lighting totals about $1 million. An 8-lane competitive running track, $600,000, additional equipment and fencing. Next slide. So when we take Hemlich's number and look at the columns, are the base bid with all the alternates added, and it kind of accumulates there. You'll see the total cost of the project, including contingency costs, which increase as the value of the project increase. Our owner's project manager and our architect fees are the same across the board, as well as other fees that we're anticipating, whether they're permitting fees or additional fees that we might have to pay to Eversource or other fees. I should also mention that the fields lie in Lincoln and in Lexington. So we had to go through the permitting process with the planning boards and conservation committees of both towns, and a full build was approved and has been approved for a number of months. So that's all been done. But when you go to the bottom right-hand cell, that shows the delta between what we have already in our district budget and what we would need to finish all the alternates, including the lights and the track. Next slide. Yeah, that just shows it again. And we, in our analysis, we were using a borrowing rate of 1.7%. But I've had a couple meetings with the town managers. Chris was attending those, and they were reporting to us, to me, that the rates have been between 0.6 and 0.7. So we're probably going to have a pretty favorable rate. Next slide. The revenue potential, we did an analysis of the revenue potential of a full build, which included tennis courts. This does not include tennis courts. And we were using our historical rental rates that we had experienced from private groups, public groups, for-profit, nonprofit. And our estimates were, we thought they were good, but we submitted them to Ballard and King. It's a national company housed in Colorado. And they came back with some pretty conservative estimates. And so we decided to adopt the most conservative estimates of the field revenue potential. In addition to the revenue potential of this full build of phase one, you know, we haven't had home fields, and we've been spending $75,000 to $100,000 a year on renting fields, on transporting our athletes to all away games. We haven't had a home game in several years. So those costs would be avoided. And just if you haven't been to the new building, there's quite a stable, I guess, of assets that could generate revenue. And these fields would just be, as Ford refers to, the icing on the cake. We have a full theater, not an auditorium, an unbelievable gymnasium, corporate meeting rooms that our business partners asked us to install that can accommodate 180 people. That's serviced by our hospitality and culinary arts students. There's a large courtyard off there, a student union, a restaurant. We have training areas, classrooms, and common spaces that are all, people are already asking to rent them. And of course, with COVID, we're not renting anything. Next slide. Oh, so what would it cost Dover? So this is the 9-member towns. And in the second column, you'll see the annual payment of borrowing $1.9 million. And Dover's share at the moment, based upon the 4-year rolling average, this full build would be assessed to Dover from $4,300 to $4,000 over the next 10 years. Next slide. Construction schedule. We've already awarded the base bid. We haven't awarded any of the alternate bids. But basically a year from now, and if we have some good winter weather, maybe 11 months from now, the full build would be completed. Next schedule, or next slide. I've been at a lot of meetings. So that's the overview of what we're anticipating doing.
Let me just add that Hemlich has guaranteed to hold the alternates and alternates pricing basically through January. After that, they may increase them, but they've committed to hold those numbers, so that's important. The school committee at our last meeting voted unanimously to move forward with this project. And therefore, we've given the towns, I don't know if the letter's gone out yet, Ed, but 60 days from the time that we made our vote to disapprove the bonding. And that would require a town meeting in order to do that. So that's where we are. And Ed, you have been out to how many communities so far?
Oh, all of them, sometimes several. Lexington tonight will be the 3rd meeting in Lexington. And I've met with the town managers twice, and we really were encouraged to move forward with this borrowing to complete the project in a lot of ways, and to provide us with an asset that has a lot more rental value, especially this time of year. Those fields would be lit up right now.
So, and all the communities have indicated they're not calling a special town meeting, and that means approval, but we can't move forward on the AdAlternates for another 60 days, but that takes us into January, and that works with Hemlich. So any questions, comments?
John?
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Ford. And Ed, thank you very, very much for that presentation. Before, I just have a couple of quick comments, but before I do, I just wanted to say congratulations to you.
Thank you.
On this process, on being for $3,887,000 under budget is remarkable. And I know you're probably too modest to mention, but the recent recognition that you received personally from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the job that you do as a superintendent.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Congratulations. That is very impressive for all of the things that you've put together for the past few years. To be recognized amongst your peers is pretty impressive. I am enthusiastically supporting this forward, and I think for a $44,000 investment over 10 years, that is money very, very well spent. So, and if my math is correct, Ed, it's just a 1.95% as a percentage of the towns in our peer group.
That's correct.
Great, thank you, sir, and thanks again, Ford, for all of your help on this.
Robin?
I only have one question, and I think it's more, and Chris may be able to confirm it. So Chris, can you confirm that we don't need town meeting approval to vote on the current bonding? We only need it if we disapprove?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, the cost just gets rolled into our annual assessment moving forward.
Right.
You know, you only get one number at the town meeting, and that includes operating, capital, et cetera, and that's all rolled into the same assessment number for the town.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. That was a great presentation, Ed. Very thorough.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm not going to comment on the presentation. I'm going to comment on the accomplishment of the building and the programs and the growth at Minuteman. Ford and I have been talking about this on and off for any number of years. And Ford knows that my view is that this is an incredible resource to the communities that are involved. And it's an incredible opportunity for one heck of a number of people to attend and get to take part in various programs that you guys have built and developed over the last several years. And I think that you're seeing growth in enrollment. I think you have a waiting list in terms of students. And
we do.
It's just a tremendous achievement. And obviously you should have built bigger.
Don't get me going, Bob. Don't get me going.
But there's a plan out there that we're
Yeah. That's the next step. Yeah.
Can I mute Bob? No, I can't. Okay.
He didn't feel the pain like the three of us did, just trying to get this current building done.
Oh my goodness.
Right. I remember.
I definitely want to thank you and the people who are behind the scenes and have worked, I'm sure, their tails off for any number of years to make this happen, with the exception of Ford. I want to say thank you very much, and please pass that on to them.
I appreciate that.
Separately.
Thank you.
You know, one thing that I think I'm very grateful to is the town of Dover. Now, the town of Dover has supported Minuteman from the very beginning, and I think that says a lot for the town. Also, the enrollment is slowly increasing, and it looks like it'll increase quite a bit or substantially next year for the next year freshman class. There's interest, and that really goes back to actually the Dover-Sherburne school community, and the superintendent and the principal of the middle school. They are so supportive of Minuteman. They both, the superintendent and the principal, were up at our when we opened up the building, that ceremony, and anytime I've contacted them, they've gotten right on supporting us. Dover is an amazing community when I think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a thought, Ed, but it went right out the other ear. So what I don't have is a suggested motion.
But you don't necessarily need to make a motion just by virtue of not acting or calling a special town meeting. Is your motion, but if the board wanted tonight to, make a motion to support the project as a sign of support, you could do that. In that case, I'd, just recommend that you move to support the athletic complex, presentation as presented this evening.
Yeah, okay, so I'll take a second to Chris's motion.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor, aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Ed, thank you very much for taking time to talk to us tonight. Good luck. You guys have done a heck of a job. Wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your support and look forward to having you out at school as soon as we can.
Yeah, I'd
sounds
like
great.
to get out there. I missed the opening. I missed the ribbon cutting. I wouldn't mind getting out there. And I
You'd
do
like
think
to
that as
Bob?
you do the brand, you will be getting a lot more interest from various communities.
Yeah.
There's that hurdle that has to get over.
Bob, I think you know who to call if you'd like to go out
Who? Do you know somebody?
anytime.
Oh, boy.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a
Thanks.
good evening.
Bye-bye. So I gotta find the agenda, wherever that is. So we're going to item 1.3, quarterly goals discussion. Mr. Dwelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to bring up a presentation of FY21 Quarter 1 goal progress and status update. So we started I'd say maybe a new tradition last year in which we updated the community on the progress of the board's goals each quarter. And this presentation is a representation and an update of our progress to date. So on the next slide is a summary of the board's FY21 goals and our present status toward them. As a reminder for folks who may be watching tonight, a lot of the community's goals this year are centered around modernization, long-term financial planning, land use and open space, and the town's governance structure, very similar to last year and in years past. And in subsequent slides, I'll provide more detail into each focus area under those goals, as well as our status to date. So the next slide jumps right into our focus areas under modernization. And the first focus area under the goal of modernization is around better leveraging our website. And so in the spring, we're able to roll out a really robust, modern, and updated website that had really increased functionality to better communicate and better serve the community. And so we want to continue to iterate and to build off of that platform now that we have that in place. So one of the first things that we wanted to do was really make sure that we had empowered staff to be able to regularly update information on the website and not have it necessarily siloed with one or two people. And this allows more people to participate in the website, and it allows the content to continuously be updated on a more regular basis, making it a more useful and informative vehicle and tool for the community. We also wanted to make sure, and I should say that process is still in place. I met with the website admin team just a few hours ago, Kate and Felicia, to talk about their progress toward that, and they're getting close to finalizing that. The other big piece that we did when we rolled out the website, but that we did this year, was we wanted to take a step back and issue a survey to gauge the public's feedback on the new website. Is it good? Is it bad? What are areas where we could improve on in the site? We were pleased to receive over 80% high approval rating of the new site versus our old site, as well as the increased amount of information that was contained within the site. And that was a really positive thing to see. We also did learn a few things that have been helpful for us. One is around, I think it was just a general question around why does it take 3 clicks to open up a meeting agenda, which is really great feedback. And so on that particular example I just gave, the website team is working on actually reducing that presently. So now in the future, when people move forward, go to the calendar, either on the main homepage or through the calendar subpage, they'll be able to just click on the event and all the information and the agenda will be there, so that clicks are reduced on that. So that was really helpful. And that was the intent of the survey, was to be able to get that feedback. And then as we move forward, we want to make sure that we continue to expand on the actual platform beyond just content. And this is really around actual tools that can be leveraged now that we have the platform. One example that I'll give you this evening is being able to move toward online form submission, so that residents, in the example of going and applying for a recycling or transfer station sticker, no longer need to print out a piece of paper off of the website, handwrite in their application, mail that back into a department. That all this will be able to be done electronically and online, which saves staff time, allows us to actually start to better capture data and information about the populations that we serve. And it just makes business, it makes residents' experience with the town much more simpler. And so that example that I just gave will be out, I should say, in the next couple of weeks. And our team is going to continue to look at options like that to move forward. So on the next slide, continuing on the modernization goal, our other area was more focused on people, and as a complement to our applications and the technology focus that we have. So we're continuing to move forward with prioritizing and implementing the HR audit recommendations that were conducted last year. The initial focus has been on updating our personnel policies. We're continuing to develop out performance plans for a lot of our focus areas. Our core focus areas that we've talked about as they relate to the goals are around our HR audit, the DOR financial management review recommendations, and our website project implementation. And this allows us to continue to just work as a collaborative team effectively and efficiently. On the next slide, which shifts to our this town's second goal around long-term financial planning. Our first focus area was around implementing the financial reserve policies that we have worked on over the past few years. The focus this year, as it has been discussed, well, let me actually take a step back and recap. So a lot of time was spent last year through a cross-functional, citizen-driven reserve policy committee to look at what policies the town could implement to ensure Dover's financial stability now and into the future. And so since that work, and since a little bit of our delay last year in terms of not being able to have a lot of the warrant articles that we were hoping we could have because of COVID, we've taken a step back and we've re-engaged and figured out what our consensus is going to be this year. And that consensus is around developing out and presenting and proposing a capital stabilization fund, which was part of the recommendation of the work that was done by the team last year. And so I've got the steps here that we're taking, and we're making pretty good progress on finalizing the pieces. It's important for these pieces to be finalized because the outcome of this will be a unified message and information that we can share with the community and policymakers and stakeholders, so that everybody understands what we collectively are trying to accomplish. And this is all to lead up to a planned town meeting in the spring. The second focus area under long-term financial planning is to implement the DOR report recommendations, which I just referenced, and this is on the next slide. First thing, obviously, is to make sure that, to take a look at actually what are the recommendations that we presently have underway. And we're fortunate enough to have a good finance team that has been making progress toward a lot of the operational recommendations already. And so we've developed out a work plan that we've shared with the board and with the community at a public meeting about a month ago when the DOR came and presented the financial report, and that details out in detail all of the finance team's operational improvement plans moving forward. So from an operational standpoint, we've identified what we need to work on, and we have started to work on it. And the second piece from the DOR is to continue to work with the Board of Selectmen as well as other town policymakers on some of the other recommendations that require community input in order to affect. And these are things like a reserve policy, which was included in those recommendations, as well as a comprehensive review of the town's operating structure, which I'll get to later on in the presentation. The third focus area under the long-term financial planning goal is around ensuring, and this continues from the last slide, ensuring that we're implementing internal financial controls. And so at the tail end of last year, and this is on the next slide, Kate, we established, worked with budget consultant professionals to draft internal financial control policies around how our finance team works together. And we have completed that work and have started to implement that work. And these policies will be up on our soon to be released finance website page that'll detail all these policies, past blue books, budget presentations, so that everyone in the community has all this information right at their fingertips and can go back to reference it. And then, of course, we also this year created and issued budget reports for the Board of Selectmen and stakeholders on the Warrant Committee and Capital Budget Committee so that they could follow along with the town's financial progress throughout the year, specifically as it relates to year-to-date expenditures. The finance team is presently working on year-to-date revenue reports so that you can see both sides of the coin. And all this information, again, just increases transparency, helps people make better, stronger decisions, and really allows us to follow the path from the beginning of the fiscal year all the way through our budget setting process so that we're all informed as we do set the budget, move forward and present it to town meeting. Moving over to goal 3, and I'm almost done, I will say, is land use open space. Our first focus area is around continuing to work with Hale Reservation, and Selectman Jeffries is the Board of Selectmen liaison for this work. Other than continuing to work with the task force, 2 things that I'd highlight. One is that the group has been soliciting quotes for appraisal services. This was a decision that was made by the group to better understand what potentially could be done over at Hale and what could potentially be presented to the community as an opportunity with the property, that they'd like to understand what the actual market value of the property is. And this appraisal work will allow us to identify that and then allow the group to start to have those more concrete discussions around what the future might look like. In addition, I will mention, since it's on Hale now, and it will save me from updating the board later during the town administrator updates, the group will be meeting next week and we'll be hearing from Hale representatives who will be providing the community with an update on their financial picture, as well as some of the other financial considerations that they'd like to update the community on. Our next focus area under the land use and open space goal is the recruitment of a land use department head, which is, can be otherwise known as a full-time town planner. We were fortunate enough to get this presented and approved at this year's town meeting, and we are nearing completion on the recruitment of the position. Just to remind folks that the town for many years has worked with a fantastic planner consultant, but that the engagement was limited on a part-time basis. And with that consultant now moving on, the town is both without, well, the town is without a planner. And so that's obviously something that we want to correct. But there was also a recognition last year, really driven by the planning board, on the benefits that the town could see and would see from a full-time planner. So this is a really key position. And we are looking at first round panel interviews with representatives from the community the first week of December. So I think ideally we'd be looking at probably a February start date for this position. The last focus area on, or the second to last focus area for land use and open space is around master planning. And there's been really a focus on not only coordinating, or not only working with the planning board as they update the master plan, but also to focus in on a couple of areas, primarily as it relates to housing production and open space. And a lot of this work will really pick up, I would say, when we have the land use director in place to really help assist the planning board with this, the planning board who has been doing a lot of great work toward this already to date. The last focus area under the land use and open space goal is around water resources. And based on a few events last year, next slide, primarily around the boil water order that came in over the summer, it was the board clearly had a few focus areas. One was to take a look at our existing agreement with the water company, and then also to take a look at what the community could do long-term to ensure that the community has sustainable water resources now and into the future. And so Selectwoman Hunter is the Board of Selectmen liaison on both of these fronts. We are getting close to wrapping up negotiations with the water company on some key areas that are of interest to the town. It's premature for me to speak to them now, but they've been good. It's been a good dialogue and good conversation with the water company to date, and things are progressing nicely. And the second piece is, of course, the long-term piece that I'd mentioned about, which is establishing a task force to evaluate long-term recommendations and options for water resources. And we are presently finalizing our proposed membership for that group as we speak. All right, I promise I got two left here. The last goal is around government structure. And the first focus area is really around supporting Dover's volunteer base, which is robust and strong and allows the community to really accomplish everything that we've seen here tonight and everything that the community has seen for many years. And so we want to be sure to provide them with as much support as needed. One of the things that we've heard from a lot of volunteers is around just a training curriculum, a regular training curriculum, refreshers on open meeting law, and procurement law and other best practices out there. And so we haven't quite started this yet. We've got a draft curriculum in place, but we haven't started to put the pieces together to roll that out, but we'll get this done this year. And similarly to that curriculum is a volunteer hearing book, so that volunteers, as they continue to serve or as they come on board to serve the community, they have a resource that they can reference on demand and at their fingertips. And that's the other piece of that. The next focus area is around creating synergy between boards and committees. And so I think what I'd highlight here is a few key things. The general focus is around certainly working with committees to identify these opportunities for synergy and collaboration. But specifically, our efforts so far to date have been focused on working with the Park and Recreation Commission and the Cemetery Commission on the DPW organizational assessment that the board authorized me to move forward with at our last meeting. That's with Community Paradigm, who's a consulting firm who will come in and help us best understand how we could leverage a DPW organization in town. We've partnered and continue to partner with the warrant committee on the budget process synchronization. Again, this ties back to some of the prior goals around ensuring that everyone has the same information and everybody's meeting regularly so that all policymaking groups are informed in tandem as these processes unfold and as decisions are made. And the last piece also ties back to an earlier goal, which is working with the Capital Budget Committee and the Warrant Committee on that capital stabilization fund that I had referenced earlier. This last slide is our last focus area. It is a little duplicative in terms of the specific action item around conducting a DPW organizational assessment, which I'd mentioned earlier, has started by way of preliminary conversation with the consultant. And then the second piece around this is to begin the process of a charter review, which has been a focus of the community in terms of, it's been characterized, I think, and publicly talked about as, Dover 2020, and what does the town's government structure look like today, and what do we anticipate it looking like in the future, and how can we make sure that the community is set up in the best way for continued success. And so my last slide is just a list of some additional ongoing projects that I wanted to provide to everybody that didn't necessarily fit neatly into any of the explicit board goals, but they are core efforts that we're undertaking. I won't read these off as everyone can see them on their slides, but a lot of these, again, center around modernization, support for staff, technology implementation, financial best practices. And then, we've got some of our bigger, more community-based projects around the cell tower, solar, and of course, the Carroll Community Center building project. So that is my Q1 update for the community. Also, in keeping with tradition, this presentation will go up on the town's goal and project website so that anyone can follow along, come back and reference it, and we'll continue to add these quarterly updates to the website so that people are able to see a linear progression toward our efforts and our accomplishments throughout the year. So thank you.
Chris, thank you very much. That was well done. Appreciate it. John or Robin, any follow-up questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just I was taking notes, Chris, on and hanging on every word, and I'm pretty sure Robin will correct me, but I counted 128 goals and objectives that you just went through. Robin, was that right?
I don't know, John, because as he was going through what has been accomplished, I started feeling guilty about some of the things that I'm behind on, and wrote myself some notes about moving things forward, because I don't want to be the reason why some of these goals are not accomplished.
Very, very good exercise, Mrs. Hunter. Very good. It is impressive. It's inclusive. It is well thought out. There's so many things that we start on, Chris, and there are goals and objectives that, as we all know, for reasons that are out of our control, there becomes the goal and objective gets expanded, or something gets added to the mix that we have to then bring in other people or consult with other entities, or it becomes, the timeline gets stretched. And I love the linear progression. I love the fact that it lives somewhere, becomes a living and breathing thing, we can look at it, as Robin just said, we can remind ourselves that we have things that we are in the process of doing and get back to. So well done. I'm more than just a little bit, being a little bit more sarcastic than normal, but it is a lot. And we've got a lot, you've got a lot. And as Bob said, congratulations, well presented. And it's exciting to see all the things that we want to do actually come to fruition. Well done.
Thanks, John. Robin?
It was a great update, Chris. Thank you. And truly, I felt guilty about not moving some of my things forward when I've seen everything that the team at the townhouse has accomplished. And, you know, just to reiterate some of what John said, it's just a reminder of where we've come in such a short time. And, you know, and we're definitely making progress in the right direction. And, you know, keep in mind that moving all these improvements forward is going on while everybody is doing everything else that needs to be done. Like, I was just thinking about all the work that occurred this election season, you know, in light of COVID and the commitment of the town staff just for that. And they were still able to move these projects forward. So kudos to everybody at the townhouse.
Well, I don't have a lot to add, and I'm not going to make any corny jokes about the list is getting too light or anything like that, you know, because I'm sure we'll figure out other things to do. But there are a couple of things. There's really, I mean, to me, you know, it's hard for me to actually remember that we had turnover 2 years ago with the retirement of the town administrator, the town accountant, the assistant.
I mean, Mona was in charge for a year.
Yeah, and you know, and so you know, and then we had to replace those people. We had those people needed to train up and learn the ins and outs of Dover, and it's a pretty impressive list, given the other issue of COVID, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think for me, the feeling, I think there's just terrific collaboration across the town departments, across the administrative staff. And I really think there's a pretty good collaboration among the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator. And I think those are the critical element all the time. And getting most out of people and supporting people and moving through this process and having wins, having a lot of wins, is reinforcing and terrific. It's terrific to see that at this stage in what is really a pretty young set of initiatives. So kudos to all. And Chris is buying really good French champagne, you know, sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
So that's what you want, Bob, as a Christmas gift? Is that what you're saying? I'll write that down.
I get to pick it.
Well, I thank the board very much for the comments and, of course, your leadership and support. And I would, of course, be remiss to not recognize staff. I give this presentation, but it's a whole team that allows me to be able to share all of this great work. And so, you know, without question, I can't thank Team Dover enough for all their work.
Yeah, that's the power. That's the power. Releasing that energy and power. All right. Item 1.4, social media policy discussion. Kate O'Brien, you're up.
Chairman, just going to get the presentation up here. Okay, so I want to go back here a little bit. I think it was our April 30th meeting, if you can remember. I'm sure you can. We reviewed our communications policy, but we also had a social media policy there. That was kind of the beginning of our really consistent push of using social media. I would say there are a lot of town accounts that have been active for years, but the town just started in January and really didn't get consistent until the COVID-19 pandemic. So having a policy will really be kind of like the last piece in the social media push that we have, just to solidify and make everything official. So like I said before, we have multiple social media accounts. It's a best practice for municipalities, and Dover as a government entity must make sure online conduct is consistent with a wider range of state and federal laws. Some of these laws include the Public Records Law and its records retention requirements, the Open Meeting Law, First Amendment laws, conflict of interest laws, and laws regarding confidentiality. Right now, here's kind of just a little view of all the current social media accounts that are happening right now. Police Library does an amazing job with social media. They have TikTok videos, Pinterest, and Parks and Recreation also as well. They've been doing social media for quite some time. So some of the things that you will see on our social media is breaking news. We also use it to promote interests in concert with Dover's goals, encourages participation in town government, and highlights town operations. This is just sort of an example of some of our recent posts. As you can see, we have we posted the video of Craig's parade, which is pretty cool. We've been using this. It's been an essential part of our communications for COVID, but also when the E. coli issue came up. A lot of it's been very useful for elections as well, as far as getting the information out there about early voting, but also getting the information out there about the mail-in ballots and the COVID-19 restrictions that we had for election day and for early voting. So it's been a really great way, in addition to the website, to get that information out there to people who wouldn't necessarily go to the website, the first thing they think of. Also a great way to get people to the website. And usually every social media post, we have a link to the website. So, there's a purpose for that. We also have a YouTube channel that we post all our meetings on. And also just, any other meetings that people want on the page. We use it for advertisement, for positions, and really just generally, feel good stories, feel good Dover stories that are out there, but this is a great place to highlight them. So to just kind of give you a bigger picture, so this policy is in coordination with the developing communications policy that I presented a draft of back at our April 30th meeting. But also Dave Sullivan is working on an email policy and tying that into the IT acceptable use policy. So this was created with all of that, keeping that in mind, and they'll all be linked together. And the goal is for all social media channels to link to the social media policy. And it's a best practice, and it's a nice thing to have for the legal reasons, definitely.
Thank you, Kate. John, any comments, questions?
No, thank you very much, Kate. Excellent presentation. Do we, with regards to all the different things, for example, the Facebook and the accounts that the different departments have, will there be a coordinated effort, or does there have to be a coordinated effort from an oversight standpoint of postings and what you see, or what that person, that administrator, if you will that administrator have access to all of the various accounts? And will there be one supervisory point of entry or point of oversight?
As far as creating an account, everything has to go through the town administrator's office. So we would have to approve any new accounts. But when it comes to the town, it's very centralized, the town building. But as far as recreation, that's the department head who's in control of that. In the library, it is separate in that sense, as far as who has authorization of updating the page and the login information. That's the department head who has all that information.
Got it. Thank you.
Robin?
I apologize for the bone chewing behind me. It's a little.
Greg again?
Dinner?
So, first of all, it's hard to believe that we only started really using social media as a town in April. It seems as though it's been part of how we communicate forever. I think, really kudos to the team. I think you guys have done a really good job establishing in such short time these accounts. There is a lot of great information on the accounts. I subscribe to some of them, and I think it's a really effective way to communicate. I agree, it makes sense to have a policy so that we can ensure all of the social media accounts are in compliance with laws and regulations.
Thank you, Robin. I just think that I know where we were 3 years ago, and when you looked at that screen and those presentations and the video and all that up in your presentation, it's like, man, we've done a lot. It actually looks current. I mean, we've gone from like last century to current. That's not too shabby. So that's pretty good by any measure, all measures. So very interesting. And I at some point, I'd be interested in knowing what kind of response rates we get on any of this on the media, so that we can fine tune and judge, and because clearly it's the way that the whole world is going. So the more people we can, and it's always hard to reach people. One of the most difficult things that we have to do is try to reach the full community. I mean, we're pretty good at snippets of the community, but I'd like to make sure I understand the snippets versus the whole, and how we can, sort of expand the number of people that we reach on a regular basis. Otherwise, quite good. And I'm going to give a quiz now, because I've studied the policy very thoroughly, and I'm going to ask John specific questions about specific 3.3 under the general provisions. And if he can't answer the questions, he's got to buy the beers.
So I have a very tough question for all the selectmen. Has anybody, do you access the library's TikTok page?
I do not.
To TikTok, I defer to the youngest member of my family, who is my surrogate TikToker.
Yes, I am in the same.
They do a great job. They do. Yeah.
So
I follow them.
I think I'm going to have to get a TikTok account just to check that out.
I think you must. Absolutely. All right.
Next meeting, I will report
Well,
on my
so
TikTok.
put that down on the update for the next meeting.
Right.
I look forward to that update.
You got to put that on there. Okay, back to business. I move to approve the Town of Dover's social media policy dated November 19th, 2020.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor, aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Thank you. The chewing is interesting, by the way.
I know, that's why I have to remember I'm on mute. I have to shut mute off. Are you done chewing?
I still think it's Greg.
That's not nice.
Here we go. Agenda item 1.5, approve and execute temporary extension agreement with the Colonial Water Company. Mr. Dwelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned earlier in the goals update, we are getting close to finalizing. We're getting close to finalizing our negotiations with the company, but we have not yet finalized them. And that will require us to extend the existing agreement that has been in place for the last 3 years. This just continues the status quo until we're able to reach a new agreement with the company. The board did sign essentially this same extension back in June or July when the current 3-year agreement was coming to an end. So this
Yeah,
just
that's what I couldn't remember when it I know we needed to extend to get it done. I just didn't remember when it was. Somehow I had it in the fall, but that could have been the extension.
No, it was definitely in the summer. Because it was
June as well.
after, we spent a lot of time with the E. coli issue and it was
Yeah.
shortly
Yeah.
after that.
Okay, John or Robin, any comments, questions?
No, none for me. I would move, Mr. Chair, that we accept the update for the Colonial Water contract as defined in the memo, and I can't remember the date.
So I'm going to help you out here since I have
Thank
the thing. I move to approve the temporary extension of the current agreement with no change in terms for the 3 months to December 31st, 2020.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Okay, at the moment that Jim has been waiting for. I don't know, he might be nodding out there. I don't know, what do you think? Here we go. Set opening and closing dates for 2021 annual town meeting. I get the honors. The opening date for the 2021 annual town meeting warrant is Thursday, November 19th, 2020, and the closing date is Friday, January 15th, 2021. If any town board, department, committee, or resident is interested in placing an article on the warrant, please contact the Selectmen's office at 508-785-0032, extension 221. All warrant articles requests must be submitted to the Selectmen's office by 11 a.m. on January 15th, 2021. Questions or comments? John?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
I guess I didn't make the motion. I move to set the opening and closing dates for the 2021 annual town meeting warrant of November 19th, 2020 and January 15th, 2021 respectively. Try it again, John.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
All right, thank you very much. Jim, do you have your hand up? Okay. Moving on to item 1.7. Again, I'm the presenter. How come you guys are making me do all this work?
Because the chair
Good
has to
management.
work, Bob.
I should have a list like Chris has with all the ongoing stuff.
Just good management on our part.
Delegation, John.
Exactly.
Appointment of Paul Latasi as forest warden. It is the town's practice to appoint the fire chief as the forest warden. Due to the resignation of Fire Chief Craig Hughes, the forest warden position is vacant, and the Board of Fire Engineers is requesting that interim Fire Chief Paul Latasi be appointed as the forest warden. Forest warden. Any questions or comments? Yeah. I move to approve the appointment of Paul Latasi as the forest warden to fill the unexpired term of Craig Hughes for a 3-year term ending on June 30th, 2023.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Done. Board of Selectmen updates. Presenter me again. I think there are 2 things that John, do you have anything you want to bring up?
We other than you mentioned Hail next week, open space I submitted the open space discussion of this list of potential of properties that the town should be considering. I forwarded that list that I received from Amy, and I forward those to Chris. I believe he has sent a copy both to you and to Robin, just so we could have for further discussions. That's all I wanted to bring to everyone's attention this evening.
Okay, thank you. So Robin, I'm guessing you don't have an update.
I do not. Well, I did attend the Water Resource Committee meeting. They are doing a lot of good work and have made a lot of progress on their communication policy. It appears anecdotally that all the communication to the town regarding the drought really cut back water use towards the late spring, the late fall.
Yeah.
We know from Colonial Water that they saw a 30% decrease in water consumption during that time. And so I think the signs throughout the town were really effective. They're looking at what other towns have been doing to try and educate their citizens about water conservation, especially during the drought period. I believe they are in the process of putting up some frequently asked questions about, water resources in Dover and drought management on the website. I believe they're working with Kate and Felicia to get that up on the website. So they still continue to do a lot of really good work. They did have another readout from their monitoring wells, and as expected, water levels were lower because of the drought, but they did see a little bit of a bounce back with the rains that we received.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. So Chris, I think that Colonial Water is going to be on the agenda for one of the upcoming meetings.
Yeah, we have them scheduled for the next meeting, which I believe is the 3rd. Yes, December 3rd.
Okay, and they're going to talk about the log4 system that they're putting in. And I would like them to, I would also like them to confirm that the conservation measures that Robin referred to have continued, because they certainly made, they were pretty aggressive back in around, I think it was August or September, where they were quoting pretty substantial reductions in water use. So it'd be nice to know if we can confirm that, and that would, reemphasize the importance of communication to the community. So that if you would ask them to take a look, that'd be really good. There is also another group doing some work around town meeting prep, and we've gotten together, I guess, once formally, Jim. You're muted.
I think once. I think together once.
It was a lively meeting and a lively topic, and we really had two streams that we were sort of working, that we have identified and we intend to work through. So one theme is, we need to plan for the usual town meeting. We're going to have town meeting in 2021, one way or another, and so people need to be prepared to do the work necessary to lead up to and ultimately have the town meeting. That's one. And then during some of the discussions around that, and I think Jim had this point, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as we do go through the warrant process, in order to make sure we understand if there are going to be controversial items, so we can understand how best to handle town meeting, there was a suggestion that boards and commissions putting together warrant articles actually have several, one or two or three educational forums for the town, so that they could assess the reaction of the town to their various proposals before we get them we go to open hearing. The thought was that that the more we can vet different articles, the better positioned we would be as we go through the work getting to town meeting. Did I get that right, Jim?
Yeah, that's right. The key is to try to determine what the issues are with the articles that various boards are proposing ahead of time. So as you suggest, that we can try to determine what type of meeting we can conduct and what are the topics that we can consider. As you mentioned, I think it's worth emphasizing that we're hoping to have a regular full-blown, full quorum town meeting. But we're planning many scenarios, one of which would be very similar to what we had last June, which would be a reduced quorum, very much truncated meeting, just dealing with critical items. Hopefully we won't have to do that again, but that is certainly one of the scenarios that we're trying to anticipate and plan for.
Thank you, Jim. You stole my thunder. I was going to get into phase 2. So I made this analogy, and I don't really know if it's any good, but I think about the plan to have a usual town meeting, whether indoor or outdoor, with the quorum is kind of the highway. And I was thinking about, because we have and then the second part of it is, where do we put exit ramps to sort of move in sync with the evolving situation with COVID. And when we spent a fair amount of time at that first meeting, looking at all of the considerations that had taken place in really a very short window of trying to get to a town meeting in 2020. So we put together, we put together a number of different scenarios and a number of different considerations. We'll work on those, and we'll refine this over time so that we sort of have a playbook, and we just simply will follow the evolution of COVID and what we can and can't do, and modify our approach as required. But we can't, we can only prepare and have the playbook because none of us really know what the situation is going to be as we approach the May town meeting. So better prepared. I think we have the experience of 2021. We have more time to prepare. And I think given the accomplishments of the administrative team and the departmental team, Jim, we have a big challenge in front of us to sort of get up to that level of performance, but I know we can do it. And we'll adjust. We'll simply adjust going on, and we'll keep in mind, that we need the issues will be around Dover specific issues. We know about distancing. We know about masks. We know about indoor. We know about outdoor. So there's a whole lot of things that we know about indoor ventilation, and the various and sundry rules that we have to adhere to, and notices that have to be provided in order to keep everything on board. So I think I don't know if it's going to be like, I don't think we have to meet like bi-weekly or weekly, but the meetings are certainly interesting. And we will be ready for town meeting in 2021. Jim, is that all right? Did I get it?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Bob. I think it's really important to emphasize that in the worst case scenario, if we're in the same place that we were last year, we can have a truncated meeting the way we did last year. We had 0 infections that were traced to that meeting. And then hopefully, given the progress that's being made with the vaccines, then in the fall, we can play catch up and consider all the other items that are important to the town, but that aren't vital. So even in a worst case scenario, I'm hoping that we'll be able to get everything in eventually.
Yeah, well, yeah. And that reminds me, I think the other consideration, John and Robin, is we're pretty sure that the Carroll-related special town meeting should happen in the fall. And then we would, that takes it off the plate for a May, June town meeting. Otherwise, stay tuned. Unless you guys have comments or you'd like to make. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I would add is perhaps my role at work, it gives me a little bit more of a pessimistic, or I like to think realistic role. Right now, the state has a outdoor meeting limit of 25 and an indoor meeting limit of 10. And the current state of infections nationally are literally 4 times what they were last year when we had to have a truncated town meeting. So even if we get incredible relief and it begins to go back down, even if the vaccine is introduced, there are 330 million Americans and 6-point-something billion people around the world. And it is not realistic to think that these companies are going to give all of the vaccines to Americans first. And then you have to divide all the vaccine doses by 2 because it takes 2 doses to get there. So the chances of a May town meeting being deemed safe because of the vaccine, I think is an unrealistic, even June is a very unrealistic scenario. And so we're going to need to plan for trying to do what we did last year as a minimum so that the town has a budget. We're not at the mercy of the state with monthly budget submissions. And then as Jim said, hopefully more towards the fall, maybe the vaccines are more widely available and the immunity process is more entrenched where we could actually consider it. But even then, I think we may have to just be patient as this pandemic runs its course.
Thanks, Dave. I would think that's pessimistic.
Or realistic.
Yeah, I know. It always depends on which shoe.
Yeah.
So I was good. So a couple of comments though, and then we need to worry about the environment in Dover. Not in South Dakota. And in Dover, because of the Board of Health and really good compliance and adherence on the part of residents, and I'll touch wood, we're in depending on which day of the week and which colors people sort of refer to, where we are in reasonable shape. And that's going to be one of the ingredients, one of the key ingredients. Obviously, we're going to follow state guidelines and adhere to that because that's what we've done essentially since day one. And again, we can paint any number of different scenarios. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do need to have the scenario so that if that was if the situation is critical, we know what we're going to do. We communicate to the public, and that's the other piece. We really need to make sure that we communicate consistently to the public. But working together, staying in tune, keeping our heads down, being aware, it seems to be the way to get it done. I think that's what you guys did last year, and it was successful. So that's it for me. I don't know, John or Robin, do you guys have?
No, what I would say, just to sort of give you the sense, and I totally understand and respect Dave's position because we're in very similar businesses and we see a lot of the same data, and we constantly have to analyze where things are going to be 6 months from now and a year from now in the best case scenario, and then plan for the worst case scenario. So as the words are coming out of Dave's mouth, I can hear and see all of the things that he's thinking of, that he sees, that I see, because we're looking at a lot of the same data every day. But I do also agree with what you said, Bob, about it's got to be specific to, we have to be thinking about Dover. We have to be mindful that we're going to plan for what is in the best interest for our community and be mindful of what's happening in our community. My only comment with regards to the statistics and what Dave said about the number of cases, the number of cases are up significantly, and the ramp and the projection of where those cases are going. But we're also in a very different environment where we know what works and we know how to flatten that curve very quickly. So I think what everybody is saying is stay tuned, and we will be planned for business as we need to conduct it, and we will be able to pivot as needed.
Thank you, John. Robin?
Well, I don't want to belabor things. I think the key here is to prepare for town meeting, to determine what needs to happen, and then look at the environment and make a decision that's best for the town as well as the citizens of Dover. Now, hopefully things are better by the spring, but we really don't know.
Really don't know.
So I think we just have to be prepared to adjust as needed. And last year we didn't have the opportunity to plan, and I think what hurt the town was our inability to be able to provide citizens with information regarding town meeting. But we've all gotten really good at these video type meetings. We know they work, and that's how we have to plan to disseminate information. So, you know, that's what we should plan to do, is disseminate information this way. Hopefully we can have a more expanded town meeting than we had last year. But if we can't, we know at a minimum, just like Jim said, that we can get the budget approved with a reduced quorum. And if that's what we need to do, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, Jim.
I just want, and Robin raises a good point about communication. And I was wondering, Bob, is there some mechanism that's in place to communicate your point about the town boards vetting controversial issues ahead of time through open hearings? Is there some formal chain of command that we can communicate that wish to all the board chairs?
So Jim, you help me out. Is it a warrant committee? The warrant, is it driven by you guys, by the Board of Selectmen? Who's it driven by?
Well, I think it's driven by the Board of Selectmen because you control the warrant.
Okay. So then I think that, Chris, it seems to me that we put together something and then, you know, a note to boards and committees how we want to, how they should be vetting proposed warrant articles with the public, so that we can get a sense of things that would be controversial, because we are planning, you know, we're beginning the planning stage for town meeting, and we want to make sure that we have as most information as we possibly can, so we can prepare properly for the best of the town, for the best of the people who attend. And I also think that from a communications perspective, Jim, that you know, all of the avenues that Kate went over in terms of getting information out, we should utilize the website, all of the social media platforms, and let's also work for us on a couple of different initiatives have been asking people with extensive email lists to distribute information. So we have a relatively robust way of reaching citizens. And I think we have more traditional ways of working with the board and commissions within the town, but that needs to get ramped up. And well, that doesn't have to get ramped up. We just need to be prepared to do that. And that really should be something that I think Chris and I will talk about when we have our get together.
Bob, one quick comment, if I may, just to add to that. I will say that we can, to use the example of the Colonial Water and the crisis with the E. coli and the management process of that, I will say that we got very, very high marks from the people that I spoke with and the people who gave feedback to us as a board. And I would remind everybody that on 2 consecutive Zoom calls regarding that issue, we had more people attend the Zoom call, 170, I believe it was 177 attendees. We had more people attend those calls than we did the last town meeting that we actually had town meeting. So I know it was a very controversial thing, but it just shows that people will attend when their interests are motivated.
I take Jim and Robin's point, Dave's point. I mean, people were doing this stuff on the fly last May. And we have the luxury of time, and we have the luxury of, and we have the opportunity to do a fair amount of communication. I mean, we tried the information sessions last year, but it was very late in the day. And among COVID, most people had other things to worry about. Kids were home. I mean, it was just a very, very troubling environment. We just have more opportunity to get it right this time. Not that you got it wrong last time. It's just, we just have the time.
Right, I mean, just thinking out loud, once we do have the warrant set, or, when we have a general idea when it closes, we could post that on the website and just ask if non-recurring warrant type things, maybe publish a few dates where we'll have information sessions.
Sure.
And that might be a way to get, people thinking about it. I know for our reserve policy, that's something we were planning to do, is to have a few information sessions for people to attend and ask questions.
Yeah, Jim.
Yep. Yeah, Robin, what we had at the meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, we had talked about structuring the warrant so that we had the critical articles first, and then the more frosting on the cake type articles later in the warrant. And the thought was that allowed us to fail safe, in that if it turns out that we're in a real high incidence COVID environment and we're going to have to go with a reduced quorum requirement, that we would just go through the first articles, the vital articles, so that we don't have to go hand in hand to the Department of Revenue, and then adjourn the meeting, and then later in the fall have special town meetings to deal with the rest of the warrant articles. So that was the sort of the thought process, that we're planning as though we're going to do it all, but we have the warrant organized in such a way that we have a break point that's easily identified, that can be communicated to everybody in the town, and then we can proceed with the other items later in the fall, hopefully when things are better.
Conceptually, that makes sense to me. I would have to defer to Felicia and Chris about, whether how to do that. I just wouldn't know how to go about doing that. But it certainly, from a common sense standpoint, seems extremely practical. But I would think we have to have two actual town meetings, correct? Because if you adjourn the meeting, then the budget isn't approved technically.
No, well, no, it would be approved after.
Oh, okay.
That's why we would adjourn. If it turns out we're in a high incidence scenario, then we would adjourn the meeting. So that would mean that all the actions taken up to the point of adjournment were final, and they could be sent to the AG's office for approval. And
that makes sense.
So I don't want to. These are details that the town meeting prep group should be ironing out.
I'm sorry?
So this sounds like a town meeting prep group. So
okay, yeah. So, sorry we
I just wanted
hijacked
to
it.
give the board a general drift of the amount of work you guys have been doing.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. So the last thing I have is a quick update on Carol. And I just want to share a couple of things. So the Carroll Building Committee is going to begin, at least it's on the calendar now, to sort of start information forums, probably on December 1st, which is pretty quick. The question comes up, and so the question, so the way that this has been being shaped is that we also want to make sure that as we go out to the public, that we bridge the period between the October 2019 meeting and the issues that were spread and presented in the October 2019 meeting, and then to remind people what had been done, and then to build on that 2019 meeting and the recommendations that had led to this particular phase 2 of the project. And so I've asked the building committee and the architect and the OPM to make sure that they have a 13,000 square foot composite community center building so that people can see what that's all about. And that is quite consistent with what we had said in 2019. Then I think they also intend to have a couple of other options that they've been hearing about as part of the presentation. So there may be, in 2019, we talked about a composite building that we could have needs. We had talked about a 18,000 square foot building, which included an ask of 5,000 square feet from the town administrator for future potential space. Chris's space assessment determined that we don't need that 5,000 square feet. So you come back to the 13,000 square foot building. The building that I've asked the architects to work on is a composite building. It reflects the research that was done in 2019 with other community centers to make sure that what we were doing, what we presented, was not just what we had at Carroll, but it reflected a broader segment of communities, and that's what it's going to be. That's what we said, and that's what it should be. So that's the base. That would be the base. And then if there are significant interests in other programs or space requirements or functionality, they would be handled as separate warrant articles for voter approval. And again, that was the schematic that was the process that we laid out. So this basically all I'm saying is that process of making sure we reach the community beyond just the users of Carroll, reach out to the broader community, and basically we're trying to figure out which options they would prefer and what they would be willing to support financially. The support financially has always been the stumbling block. So we have a roadmap for that side, the renovation side, and at Monday's meeting, the architects put together a couple of design scenarios for renovation. And I really, to be perfectly honest, I hadn't really thought a lot, neither have some of the other people, about the renovation option. And the architects had come up with some very interesting ideas, one of which really centers on, most of which centers on retaining the 1910 building and renovating the 1910 building and maybe adding some other features. Looking at the schematics and looking at the drawings that they had, it was really sort of pretty appealing. So that's sort of a tease. Stay tuned. But it looks like there's sort of a road to follow on the new, and there's a road to follow on renovation that very well, as we sort of explore this, could present two very interesting ideas, proposals, as we go through the rest of this year and into 2021 for a fall town meeting. So I thought it was pretty positive. Chris, you were there. Do you have any other observations?
Oh, that does it.
Okay. Then I will move on to, and I guess there are no comments or ads for the December 3rd and December 17th agendas. Looks okay. I had the colonial water ad that was, update on the drought. Hearing none, I'm going to move on. Mr. Town Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two very quick updates for the board. One in your packet is a letter from the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions recognizing Dover's very own Sarah Monaco, who has successfully completed 8 units of the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions Fundamentals for Massachusetts Conservation Commission's training program and has received a certificate of achievement for that accomplishment. So we got a copy of this in, and I just wanted to take a moment, certainly on behalf of the board, to just give her a shout out and thank her for her commitment toward these efforts for the town.
So I think we give it, well done, Sarah.
And then just the other update that I have is I just wanted to update the board and let them know, or let you know that our air quality remediation work in the town buildings is progressing nicely. We received our portable HEPA filtration units, which were one of the core recommendations from our air quality consultant. Those are already in place at the townhouse, the town library, and the Carroll Community Center, at least in the occupied spaces of the Carroll Community Center at this point. And the core mechanical work, that was the second phase or second piece of the air quality consultant's recommendations, will begin tomorrow. So all of this is still expected to be done and in place before the end of the calendar year.
Wow.
And the town's COVID task force is meeting tomorrow, which I'm sure this will be a discussion point. So that's all I have this evening. Thanks.
Actually, there was this article I read today, I think it might have been in the journal, about a gym where an instructor had COVID and they had recently upgraded the ventilation system and nobody else got it. You know, he was in contact with 50 clients and they said that they felt that that was due to the air quality system.
Yeah, I don't know how widespread people that knowledge about all the work that we've done, not we, Chris, and the task force, to tackle the air quality issue, particularly at Carroll. But it looks like I don't want to get into a COVID-19 task force discussion, but it looks like things are moving along maybe a little bit better than we had hoped, because there was some question about lead time on some of the equipment. So that's really good news. And now, item C.1. Consent agenda. So the consent agenda items include approval of the annual retail packaged goods stores license for RWJ Beverage LLC doing business as for the wine company, and approval of the annual club license for the George B. Preston American Legion Post 209 for 2021. So the summary is renewal of annual package store and club with a license. In November of each year, the Commonwealth requires that Dover's liquor licenses be renewed and documentation submitted to the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission. Monetary and insurance requirements have been satisfied, and the American Legion has passed both the building and fire inspections as required. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor, aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
So before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I want to say to everyone, have a very happy and safe Thanksgiving. Follow the guidelines. So can I have a motion?
That's why we have a 10-pound turkey for 3 people.
We do have Rio. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
For those of you who are left, thank you for attending, and the same goes. Safe and happy Thanksgiving. Follow the guidelines.
Follow the guidelines.
Good night, folks.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much.